The storage lot sat where the highway gave up on streetlights and the town pretended not to keep its secrets there. Doors rattled with bed springs and bad decisions. One unit didn't rattle at all. When Ava rolled it open, rain smell and cold dust breathed out like the room had been holding its breath for years. She was 23, a borrowed hoodie, a wallet that did arithmetic before it opened. The auctioneer had called it mixed household, no reserve, which is what they say when they can't promise anything. She signed anyway. You don't wait for certainty when the rent notice has the month circled twice. The flashlight found the usual: a toppled dresser with one good drawer, a coffee can of screws, a mound of kitchenware that had lost its lids and purpose. Then it found the odd thing in any storage unit, the purposeful thing. A green military case, corners scarred, stencils scuffed but legible. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers 1959. Ava crouched and ran a finger along the latches. Tight, not stubborn. The concrete was slick with the kind of rain that makes decisions sound reasonable. Something heavy had skittered under a broom head. She nudged it out and thumbed it clean. A brass key tag, cold as a coin, stamped with 2 words that didn't belong in a strip of metal garages. Vault 12. Headlights washed across the doorway. Tasha's red van coughed twice and settled like an old dog. She came at a trot, EMT jacket half-zipped, braid leaking rainwater, a grin that always looked like a dare. "Please tell me you didn't adopt a family of mattresses," she said. "Worse. Better." Ava showed her the case first, then the tag. "Ever see one of these outside a museum?" Tasha whistled. "Not unless somebody ran out of time. They did the ritual: keep, sell, toss, unknown." The flashlight kept landing on the case. It felt out of place in the way a uniform feels at a picnic. There was a milk crate of metal reels, edges brittle, vinegar smell faint and insistent. A folded bundle of blueprints had bowed at the corners like they remembered water. A stack of photos was tied with twine and wrapped in wax paper like someone's careful lunch. "Open the case," Tasha said, keeping her voice even, like they were about to lift a patient. Ava popped both latches and lifted the lid as if the room were listening. Foam cutouts waited for instruments that were mostly gone. A screwdriver bit slept in its slot. A laminated card sat in a top sleeve. Temporary cultural storage, flood event, with a signature line filled in by a precise, square hand. Harold C. Randall. "Cultural storage?" Tasha said. "Not weapons, not radios. Paper and film." "And floods," Ava said, because the rain had followed them in. "You grew up hearing about the dams. I grew up hearing about the basements." They carried the case and the crate to the ranger in 2 trips. The cold found their wrists and stayed. Back at the motel, the carpet pushed tired water up around their sneakers. The night clerk had left a stack of paper plates and a kindness on the counter. Ava took both. She laid a towel on the table like an altar and set the case down. They inventoried the way poor people learn to: fast, careful, with a mental column for resale value and another for meaning. The photographs first: concrete ribs against the sky, men in narrow ties and hard hats, a chalkboard by a gauge with 2 words underlined twice: Protocol B. The blueprints next: elevation notes, pump rooms, corridors lettered by a hand that trusted rulers more than poetry. On the back corner, a faded stamp: Melton Hill Project. "Where even is Melton?" Tasha asked, stretching her shoulders the way she did between night calls. "Downriver," Ava said. "An hour if you obey the map and not the highway. Tennessee Valley Authority. Your granddad cussed at it?" "He cussed at everything that moved water without asking him," Tasha said, but she was already leaning closer. "What about the reels?" The labels were typed, then corrected in pencil. Initial storage sequence. Roll 3 of 7. There was a second label under the first, peeled halfway back as if someone had been interrupted. Ava laid the brass tag beside them. Vault 12 glinted in the motel lamp, the kind of brass that looks like it remembers the last warm hand it met. "What if this is the plan for where the county hid its soul when the river got impatient?" Tasha said, half a joke, half an admission. "You know, records, photos, sound, quilts if they were smart." "Quilts are always smarter than people," Ava said, because her mother had said that when the heat failed and the blankets didn't. She flipped the laminated card. On the back, someone had listed an intake checklist in pencil, the graphite pressed hard enough to bruise the paper. Cylinder stock. Tissue. Desiccant. Label stock. Voice log. Voice log, she read. Which means there's audio. They stared at the reels as if staring might conjure a projector. There wasn't one. They did, however, have the kind of stubborn that borrows. Tasha could get a portable preamp from the high school AV closet she volunteered at. A turntable maybe. The motel lamp hummed. The clock on the microwave was stuck at 12 o'clock like a punchline. Ava's stomach remembered it was empty. They split a drive-through bag on the bedspread and didn't taste anything. The case sat on the towel like a creature. At midnight the rain climbed the window in lines. At 2 a.m. the highway quieted into a wet whisper. At 4 Ava gave up pretending to sleep. She paced until the floor learned her footfalls, then sat on the carpet and collected her hands into something that looked calm. "I'm going back at 8, she said when Tasha finally stirred. "Office opens at 9. You can charm the AV closet." "I can charm a padlock," Tasha said. "But I'll try adults first." They parted like people who have learned the superstition that splitting tasks evenly divides bad luck. Ava went to the county building during first shift coffee while the parking lot still smelled like cold engines. The plat room clerk recognized the surname Randall the way small counties do, by a story not a file, and pointed her toward a wall of drawers that hissed their age when you pulled them. Melton Hill appeared in paper. Easements and corridors did not always match the public tours. One note beside a service road bore a federal agency name that had been renamed twice since. Government ghosts are tidy but slow. Tasha returned with a battered turntable and a preamp that had scorch marks near the plug. "The librarian gave me a look," she said, setting up the gear on the towel, "but I promised not to electrocute the shampoo bottles." They closed the curtains and dimmed the lamp until the room felt like a throat before a song. The turntable motor murmured on the second try. Ava cleaned the needle with a corner of her shirt and told the quiet she was sorry for what came next. She took the smallest reel, the one with voice log penciled faintly on its leader, and threaded it with hands that had learned patience from night shifts and overdue notices. "Ready?" Tasha asked, voice low like a church. "Before I change my mind," Ava said. The first sound was the sound of old plastic learning to be moved. Then a wash of static, soft as gauze unrolling. A man's voice stepped out of the noise thinner than it should have been, like the tape had stolen some of his breath. He didn't clear his throat. He said his name so the room would remember it. Harold C. Randall. He spoke with the patience engineers save for plans and prayer. Contingency, he said in the first minute and talked around it for 4 more. A request from Knoxville for redundant cultural storage in case of civil disturbance. A directive from Washington that obligated everyone and contradicted nobody. A flood event that would make certain rooms suddenly useful. He said Protocol B with the same underlined gray someone had written on that chalkboard. The museum's intake exceeded the space promised. Duplicates were required. Not of objects. Of records. Records were objects if you understood what scholarship meant. Ava's eyes burned, not because she wanted to cry, but because she had been holding her blink since the voice began. Tasha's hand on the towel inched closer without touching. The room didn't move. Outside, the rain finally forgot them. Randall's pencil scratched in the background as if he were underlining his own sentences. Then his voice turned personal the way men's voices do when they suspect they'll be erased. There were 12 doors in the plan, he said, and a 13th in the concrete. He had filed papers that didn't move because paper only moves when men push it, and the men who should have pushed were giving speeches under brand new floodlights. A year from now, no one would remember which room had which number. That was why you numbered things. He said a word they already owned from the blueprint stamp. Melton. The reel ticked as if it were keeping time for them. The motel's mini fridge kicked on. Somewhere, a truck coughed through a downshift. When the voice ended, it was with a scrape and a soft thump, the sound of a cabinet closing on a hand. They didn't speak for a full breath. Then Tasha said, "Tell me we're not imagining this." "We're not," Ava said. "We're late to it." She rewound the reel and played the last 30 seconds again, then again, lifting lines like planks and laying them over a gap. On the third pass, a new detail appeared. The pencil had not only scratched, it had written. Under the scrape was the faintest murmur of a number and a letter that a microphone wasn't meant to catch. V.13. Ava reached for the brass tag without looking. Vault 12 warmed in her palm. She could feel the puzzle choosing where to live in her head. She could feel tomorrow deciding to arrive sooner than planned. "Tonight?" Tasha asked, already knowing the answer. "Tonight," Ava said. "And if not tonight, the next night the river lets us. Bring the good mask. And the extra batteries. If he made a 13th door, I don't think it wants us to wait." They moved like people who had learned the superstition of balance. Divide the tasks and maybe the bad luck has itself. Ava took maps and paperwork. Tasha took gear and air. By mid-morning, the county plat rooms smelled like ink and old wool. Drawer faces clicked inside as Ava pulled them. Melton Hill appeared on paper the way a town appears from a ridge, first as shape, then as details your eyes can't unsee. Public tours traced a neat loop across spillway and overlook. Service easements curved elsewhere, crossing under roads and between parcels and lines that felt more like veins than streets. On one small square someone had stamped an agency name that no longer existed and then crossed it out with a newer name, as if bureaucracy were a palimpsest written by tired hands. She traced a route with a pencil she didn't pay for. Less highway, more river logic. A maintenance pull-off the tourists never saw. A footpath cut by fishermen and made official only by repetition. If there's a 13th room, she murmured, it wouldn't want a crowd. The librarian at the high school frowned at the battle-scarred turntable in Tasha's hands, softened at the word archive, and finally melted when Tasha said emergency medical technician and yesterday we pulled a teenager out of a creek culvert. She came back with a coil of extension cord, a preamp with a chipped switch, and a grin that said don't tell me where this goes. At lunchtime the motel smelled like coffee, rain, and the kind of carpet that has outlived 3 owners. Ava spread the copied plats on the bedspread, anchoring corners with a brass tag and a motel Bible. The tag read Vault 12 and felt heavier every time she picked it up. You know it's just metal, Tasha said. It's a key that forgot its door, Ava said. They agreed on rules without writing them. No heroics. No forcing anything that said don't. Masks on when the air changed. Batteries swapped before they begged. If separated, follow water uphill, not downhill. People get found above, not below. They left before dusk, the hour when streetlights try to remember which side they work for. Tasha's van labored up the county road and settled into the trees near a service lane. Ava parked the Ranger farther down where it could pretend to belong to someone who fished a lot and talked little. The river raised its shoulders in the last of the evening light. Melton's public face, the overlook with the pumpkin orange railing, the historical sign, the trash can shaped like a courteous bear, was a bend away. The face they needed had no plaque. Concrete warmed and then cooled under their palms as they followed the contour the plats had promised. The dirt scuffed into a path. The path turned to a concrete apron scarred by tire chains and a pattern of gouges that said heavy things had been moved here often. Lock, Tasha said softly. A welded grid blocked a corrugated culvert. The padlock was new enough to be confident, brass enough to be proud. County locks come in families, Ava said. I watched the storage yard guy move through a ring left to right. So I'm going right to left. You still carrying those picks because you grew up poor or because you grew up curious? Yes, Ava said, and the lock decided to be old for 10 seconds. They pivoted the grid just enough to slip through sideways with the case in 2 bags. The air stepped down 10 degrees. Their headlamps turned black into gray. Water spoke somewhere below them in a long, slow vowel. The culvert became a walkable tunnel, concrete poured with care in a year when men still believed in lines. Stencil numbers marked the walls at intervals. A circle with a bar through it repeated like a discrete tick. Conduit crossed overhead in ribs. One junction box wore the ghost of a label peeled off with solvent, as if words themselves could be hazardous. They breadcrumbed with fluorescent survey tape, short flags in corners, not too many, enough to get them back if fear tried to redraw the room. The CO meter on Tasha's pack blinked a friendly green. The first real door didn't announce itself. It had no number on the outside, nothing but paint, steel, and silence. But inside the jam, knee-high, paint rippled by a brush dragged before the floor finished curing, someone had written V.13 in letters small enough to be private. Tasha crouched. He didn't want Foreman to see this standing up. Ava touched the paint with 2 fingers. It felt colder than the rest of the steel, the way a word feels colder than the sentence that hides it. If V.13 exists, she said, it exists because Randall thought the record was the object and objects deserved a room of their own. The latch wasn't where a latch should be. The faceplate had been plated again. Steel over steel, the second plate welded in impatience rather than care. Ava stepped back. They learned to hate visitors. Spines don't live in faces, Tasha said, scanning along the wall. 30 feet down, a maintenance cutout pretended to be an accident under conduit. Behind it, a hand crank waited with a chain disappearing into a slit in the wall, counterweight, tension. Tasha wrapped a work glove around the handle and cranked 3 times, slow enough to count breaths. Somewhere in the slab, a polite cough. Metal accepting metal. The plated latch on the door hummed once like an old fridge deciding to live. Ava pulled. The gasket let go with a soft kiss. Smell is the oldest archivist. This room smelled of cardboard that had learned patience, oiled wood, and laundry hung indoors. Not rot. Not flood. The beams swung and found shelves built for purpose instead of improvisation. Along one wall, wooden coffers sat shoulder to shoulder like pews. Each wore a brass plate engraved with a single word that sounded like a social calendar for a county that believed its own importance. Regatta, survey, oratorio, county fair. A waterline ghosted the walls at shoulder height, the color of strong tea. Above it, the air felt dry enough to keep promises. Mask on for a minute, Tasha said, watching the meter. The green stayed green. Okay. Ava opened the nearest coffer. The lid lifted on piano hinges, reluctant to be loud. Inside, cloth packets lay in tidy strata, each stitched with a name and a date in the kind of hand schools used to teach when penmanship counted as character. She untied one packet and found a paper program from a 1937 church concert. The edges were singed, but the soprano's name sang through. Beneath it, a mounted photograph. A row of women in dresses made from feed sacks, posture like a promise. Next coffer, amateur radio. QSL cards with call signs from up and down the valley. Proof that voices bounce off the sky and find friends in the dark. Next, textiles. A quilt top, triangles of indigo and barn red that moved even when her hand was still. A muslin tag on the hem read Bledsoe, 1891. Ava pinched the fabric between two fingers, then set it down like a blessing. Take nothing we can't stabilize, she whispered, though no one was watching but the room. They documented with the phone light turned down to polite and a pencil that made no marks. Tasha photographed labels with dates and angles, muttered field notes the way she did on scene. The CO meter blinked yellow once, then green again. Air shifted. Somewhere, machinery remembered it had a job. Time, Tasha said. 5 minutes in, 5 minutes to look, 5 to leave. In the next room. They found cylinders and tin canisters stacked like a tidy skyline. Pencil labels named a place in sounds. Sermons, fiddlers, courthouse steps, mill whistle noon. Field recordings on lacquer and wax, a valley's throat laid into circles. Ava slid 3 into their hard case. The case's weight registered across her shoulder like a small sleeping animal. The third room held drawers on steel uprights. The pulls were the kind that blister unloved fingers. Each pull held a card with the same hand as the coffer labels, a county written by one faithful scribe. Oversized photographs lay in paper that smelled of wheat. Negatives slept under tissue. Contact sheets wore wax pencil circles like a teacher's approval. On the far wall, behind cracked safety glass, a blueprint had been pinned like a butterfly. Vault 13 layout. Corridors that had felt like improvisation suddenly organized themselves like a hymn. Look, Ava said, throat low. A small box in one corner, emergency pump switch. Aligned to a symbol labeled plate room. And above the symbol, in darker pencil, do not exceed 14 minutes continuous. The building had ethics. The building had limits. So did they. The CO meter clicked one notch faster. Tasha glanced at the door. Hear that? Metal met metal down the corridor. Not the gentle cough of counterweights. Hands on latches. A laugh that didn't belong to a room like this. Voices, Ava said. The words came through flat, like men talking while they worked at something they didn't want to think about too hard. Salvage, Tasha said, the way you say diagnosis before the x-ray arrives. They moved the way water moves when it doesn't want to be noticed. Steady, low, using the dark the room offered. The chase that had carried them here would carry them out. Ava slid the blueprint from its pins into a sleeve without creasing it. Tasha lifted a short strip of negatives that documented crate stencils, proof that the inventory existed somewhere beyond the photographs. They put back what hands couldn't promise to protect. They left nothing a boot could trip on and everything a conscience could find later. At the threshold, a voice in the corridor said, "That plate's an aftermarket job. We'll torch it if we have to." Another voice, older, said, "No sparks near paper. He'll have our hides." A utility radio chattered, the band Tasha knew from rescue calls. County. The men below had friends above. Go, Tasha breathed. They followed their own flags, air cooling as the room stepped away. The headlamp beams narrowed to coins and then to needles. The river's long vowel returned, patient as a metronome. Concrete pressed the shape of their shoulders back into their jackets as if to remind them who made whom. At the culvert grid, night had thickened. The first stars in the gap between trees looked like holes punched in a lid. They slipped through, rolled the grid back into its lie, and lay still in the brush while their pulse found a speed the body could afford. A truck idled somewhere it didn't need to idle. The yard above creaked with the kind of metal that only moves when told. Tasha's palm rested on the hard case. Ava's thumb worried the edge of the brass tag. The river kept talking to itself. Tomorrow, Tasha said, almost a question. Or the day after, Ava said. If the room asked for 14 minutes, I want to ask why. By morning, the motel had learned their rhythm. Ava paced while Tasha wrote notes in her rescue log like they might count as insurance. The voice on the reel hadn't left the room. It sat on the towel between the case and the map, waiting to be obeyed. "You ever think we're doing the wrong kind of archaeology?" Tasha asked. Ava didn't look up. "The living kind or the unpaid kind?" "Both," Tasha said. "One day we'll open a door and the door will open us back." The plan sounded simpler out loud. Verify the blueprint, photograph what could burn, leave evidence a court might believe. But the word salvage echoed like a cough that doesn't heal. The men last night hadn't been explorers. They'd been cleaners, legal or not. Ava studied the pencil line marked emergency pump switch. The note beside it, "Do not exceed 14 minutes, looked like a sermon written by a man who'd seen water win before. She traced the arrows to the plate room. The circles drawn on the margins matched the stenciled symbols they'd seen. V.13. Someone had documented the sin before confessing it. By noon, the sky had given up on pretending to be dry. They moved equipment like smugglers. Rope, respirators, spare headlamps, a better CO meter, and food that could survive pockets. Ava tucked the brass tag into her chest pocket where a cross might go. The weight steadied her. The tag wasn't faith, but it would do. They returned at dusk. Storm clouds bruised the treeline. The path was slicker now, the culvert throat glossier. The padlock they'd picked hung slightly different, retied, maybe replaced. Someone had been through. Still, they slipped inside, sealing the grid behind them. Darkness accepted them without a word. The headlamps found the survey flags they'd left, little flickers of domestic yellow in the gray. The CO meter blinked green, steady heartbeat. The first corridor led to the same rooms. The coffers, the quilt, the blueprint frame now empty. A muddy boot print on the floor had dried in ridges. Ava's stomach went cold. "They were here," she said. Tasha nodded. "And took what they could carry." The shelves nearest the flood line were lighter. A few tags had torn loose and fallen to the floor. One red amateur radio, the twine snapped. Ava picked it up, brushed off silt, and tucked it into her notebook. They followed the air deeper, the way animals do when instinct whispers the next hollow. Past the drawers and coffers, a short staircase turned into a corridor without markings. The walls tightened, poured concrete with less polish, more purpose. Their lamps painted the numbers 321 on the wall, then a hand-drawn arrow pointing down. Below, a hatch door half the size of the others, hinge rust faint as freckles. Tasha knelt. "This isn't on the map." "It wasn't supposed to be," Ava said. The hatch opened inward, metal squealing like it was surprised to still be metal. A draft touched their cheeks. Air moved like a tide, slow, returning. Inside, a chamber small as a freight elevator and tall enough to make their necks ache. Along one wall, rows of shelves with cylindrical holes bored into the concrete. Every hole held a tin canister identical to the others, labels fading to ghosts. "Audio," Tasha said softly. "Or film," Ava answered. "Either way, memory." They took photos, counted rows, and stopped when the CO meter blinked amber. The air smelled of iron and paper at war. Ava touched one canister. It hummed faintly as if temperature alone could sing. They were careful. The kind of careful that happens when you've already made one mistake and survived it. Each photo, each step had the quiet gravity of a heartbeat. They didn't talk. They just worked. Then the floor trembled. It was small at first, a vibration that felt more like memory than motion. Then the pipes along the ceiling ticked, pressure shifting. Water was moving somewhere it hadn't yesterday. "Time to go," Tasha said. They retraced the flags, breath too loud, boots finding puddles that hadn't been there before. Somewhere behind, a door closed, a heavy one like a statement. Their lamps cut arcs through the mist. When they reached the culvert mouth, fresh air hit like a drug. The sky above was thin gray, the kind that eats color. They crouched in the brush. A truck idled near the service yard again. Two men, silhouettes under floodlights, talked beside the open gate. A third man leaned against a Tahoe, phone lit under his chin. Ava recognized that patience, someone waiting to own what others found. They waited until the trucks drove off. Then they climbed out, lungs raw from the air that wasn't supposed to move that fast underground. "Who are they working for?" Ava asked. "Whoever still thinks Vault 13 belongs to them," Tasha said. They drove back with headlights off for half the road, both silent until the first billboard reminded them that the surface world still sold car insurance and coffee. When they reached the motel, the room felt smaller. The turntable still sat on the towel. The reel with Randall's voice waited beside it, patient and thin. Ava sat on the floor. "He knew," she said. "He knew somebody would find it after him." Tasha poured the last of the motel coffee into 2 paper cups. And he also knew someone else would try to bury it again. Sleep didn't come. Ava watched the thin motel curtain pulse in the air from the vent, listened to the highway hum and the occasional hiss of rain on the roof. Somewhere a truck horn groaned. Every sound had started meaning something, every silence too. When morning came, she already had her boots on. Tasha sat cross-legged on the bed, flipping through her notes, eyes too awake for the hour. "We can't go back empty," she said. "We need proof beyond the audio. Photos aren't enough. We need the building to talk," Ava said. "The pump switch. 14 minutes. The words sat between them like a dare. They gathered what they'd need: battery lanterns, new masks, the small crowbar that fit in a pocket. Ava photocopied Randall's note from the blueprint and folded it into her jacket. The motel TV muttered about a brush fire near the quarry. In the corner of one shot, a white Tahoe idled in the smoke like a ghost waiting for its cue. They drove out before noon, using back roads lined with pines that leaned inward like eavesdroppers. The service yard looked quiet, but quiet was never a guarantee. They left the vehicles a half-mile down and took the path again. This time, Ava carried a plan instead of a hope. The culvert greeted them like an old friend with bad memories. Inside, the air was colder, the dust newer. Someone had cleaned up. A cable spool leaned against the wall, fresh footprints leading away. Tasha checked the meter, still green. They followed the previous night's route to the pump room. The blueprint's diagram matched what her eyes remembered. The small control panel, rust-edged, wires feeding into pipes thicker than her arm. The penciled warning came back clear: no more than 14 minutes. Someone had added a second line beneath it: faint, manual override only. Ava brushed dust from the switch cover. "You ready?" "No," Tasha said. "But we're here." The switch moved stiff like something half asleep. A low mechanical breath rose through the floor. Valves turned themselves in the dark. The air grew cooler. The sound of water shifting filled the hallways, a slow surge that was less like flooding and more like memory returning to muscle. In the next corridor, men's voices jumped in alarm. "What the hell? Pressure's rising," one shouted. Another cursed, metal clanged, a toolbox hit the floor. The old alarms, forgotten for decades, woke up screaming. A long bell pealed through the concrete, deep and human in its panic. Tasha counted under her breath. 10 minutes. The sound of boots sloshing echoed behind them. They backed toward the chase, the room trembling as pumps below pushed water into cavities not meant to hold it anymore. Light bulbs flickered and went out. For a second, everything felt suspended: the hum of the machine, the echo of water, their heartbeat. At 13 minutes, the first burst of spray came through a floor seam, a thin silver fountain that hissed like a secret. Ava shut the switch down, the lever heavy with resistance. The machinery sighed, settling into reluctant silence. The building had exhaled, now it listened. Voices in the hall grew frantic. Doors slammed. Then came the wail of sirens outside, county, state, maybe federal. They had called for help. The sound vibrated through the concrete, a modern choir for an old sin. Tasha pressed her radio button, official calm in her tone. "This is Rescue Volunteer 6 reporting possible entrapment, unknown persons, hydro tunnel near Melton Hill. Request EMS and county units." "Smart," Ava said. "Now we're the ones helping." "Better headlines," Tasha said. "And better odds." They climbed toward the upper chase, following air that smelled of rain and oil. The exit hatch opened onto chaos: floodlights, county trucks, men shouting into radios, a helicopter circling slow above the yard. Water spilled from the culvert mouth into the drainage ditch, brown and breathing. Ava stepped out first, hands up. The brass tag hung from her pocket like an ID from another century. A deputy in a slicker approached, hand on holster, eyes tired rather than angry. "You two from rescue?" he asked. "Volunteer crew," Tasha said, showing her jacket. "We heard alarms on the scanner, came to assist." He looked past them at the culvert, then at the rising water. "You picked the right night. Somebody down there's about to explain a whole lot." They nodded, and he waved them toward a cluster of trucks where officials argued over clipboards. For the first time in hours, Ava let herself breathe. From the corner of her eye, she saw the Tahoe parked near the fence line. A man leaned against it, arms folded, watching. He didn't wear a uniform. When she looked directly at him, he smiled once and turned away. "County's got it from here," another officer said, already scribbling in a notepad. Ava and Tasha backed away, slow, professional. By the time the first reporters showed up, they were 2 streets down, soaked and shaking. They drove until the sirens were memory. At the motel, they peeled off wet jackets and sat on the carpet. The hard case with the cylinders waited where they'd left it. Ava turned one in her hand, its label almost gone. "You think we did the right thing?" Tasha asked. "Right's expensive," Ava said. "But sometimes it pays later." She lifted the blueprint sleeve from under the mattress. Inside, the pencil note still warned about 14 minutes, but the paper had dried into waves as if it remembered the surge. She looked at it and knew the story wasn't finished. Not when a man with a Tahoe still watched from the shadows and a voice on a reel still whispered about a door that shouldn't exist. The museum didn't blink when Ava and Tasha came back through the staff door with the hard case and a folder thick enough to make knuckles white. The intake coordinator met them wearing the same braid and the same quiet that tells you a person has lifted more than they look able to carry. She ushered them into a back room where the lights were calm and the tables were honest. "We don't need a headline," Ava said. "We need a record that can't drown." "You brought one," the coordinator said, tapping the folder. "Let's give it lungs." They laid everything out in a map the law could understand. Photographs of the jam mark V.13, copies of Randall's pencil notes, a clean transcript of the voice log, stills of coffers and cylinders and the quilt's muslin tag. The coordinator signed a receipt for the copies and stamped a temporary custody form for the 3 tins. A conservator with gentle hands began whispering to lacquer like it was a skittish animal. "Do you intend to claim ownership?" the coordinator asked, formal because she had to be. "We intend to prove intent," Ava said. Randall's words. "Good," the coordinator said. "Intent is how you steer courts and consciences." Outside, the day had the color of paper you've handled too much. The Tahoe was back, idling near the loading dock like a misplaced appliance. The same man leaned on the fender, eyes half-lidded. He didn't flinch when Tasha raised her phone and photographed him with the deliberateness of a notary. "Let's leave footprints he can't wipe," Tasha said. They spent the afternoon manufacturing redundancy. Ava bought Tyvek sleeves and banker's boxes at an office store that smelled like toner and defeat. She made 3 packets of everything: Randall's note, jam photos, field notes, the transcript, and lodged them like seeds. One at the museum with a signed receipt, one slid into a lockbox at a credit union, one mailed to the county paper that still ran obituaries with adjectives. The counterwoman at the post office stamped the registered envelope with a thunk that sounded like a door agreeing to be shut. Back at the motel, the manager handed over an envelope that wore no stamp and a careful hand. Inside, a glass negative wrapped in drafting paper and a typed note with letters crooked from a tired platen. "If this is heard, the secondary holds enough record to prove intent. Tell the museum, tell the counties, tell the churches whose quilts we borrowed and promised to return. This is not a burial. It is a bridge. C.R." In the corner, darker pencil, V.11, South Holston. Ava held the negative to the desk lamp. A wet mouth of corridor appeared, chalk arrow, plate seam. Another dam. Same handwriting on the universe. "He made more than a room," Tasha said. "He made a pattern." Phone calls began to return themselves. A deputy with a voice like coffee asked for a copy of the report they'd filed as volunteers. A natural resources investigator wanted to know, hypothetically, if the emergency pump could be manually cycled without violating anything louder than common sense. The county attorney, whose drawl felt unhurried even when his calendar wasn't, requested a meeting for purposes of clarifying chain. No one told them to stop. No one told them to keep going. The silence between those orders is where people either break or build. They drove back to Melton at shift change with a museum technician in a ball cap and a case that shut with a sound you believe in. The yard looked empty until it didn't. Floodlights carved the mist into rooms. The grid came away obediently. The air inside had found itself again overnight. Their flags still winked at them from corners. In the blueprint room, the cracked glass cabinet was empty, but a flat file under it held a duplicate. Someone had labeled it secondary in the same square hand. The penciled warning, "Do not exceed 14 minutes continuous," looked newer even if it wasn't. "They took the obvious," Ava said. "They left the habit. They worked the way you work when time is not a suggestion." The text scanned in place, calling out frame numbers. Tasha slid sleeves over paper like dressing wounds. Ava shot brackets of every hinge, weld bead, plate seam, and label that could turn into a paragraph in an affidavit. At 12 minutes the building groaned like it remembered the last time. At 13 they were already moving. At 14 they were in air. The Tahoe rolled into the service road the way patience rolls into habit. The driver didn't get out. He let the window down an inch and looked at the museum tech, then at the case, then at the deputies in the yard. The expression he wore said these things belonged to him in a way paper didn't recognize. The deputy's expression said paper would be invited to speak. Barcodes on, the text said, affixing stickers that would one day be catalog numbers read softly by docents. If anyone asks where these went, they went to numbers. That night, the county attorney filed an emergency petition with words that stack like sandbags. Protective order, cultural materials, immediate risk, custodial trustee. A judge with a reputation for war stories signed a temporary order before he finished his dinner. The museum texted a single line, order entered. Do not gloat. The next day the temperature of the site changed. Clipboards materialized. A state archaeologist in honest boots shook hands with everyone, including the men who didn't offer. He walked the corridors with the humility of someone who knows names can get it wrong. We document first, he said. Then we decide what moves. The salvage crew didn't vanish, they slowed. The Tahoe never came close enough to be counted. It stayed where it could turn away if cameras blinked. A deputy parked where it would annoy anyone trying to idle. 2 auxiliary ladies from local churches arrived uninvited with a thermos and 3 questions about the quilt. The county turned to face itself and didn't quite look away. In the afternoon, standing by the trunk of the Ranger while the river sowed its seam under gray sky, Ava and Tasha looked at each other with the ache that follows relief. We set the table, Tasha said. Now we have to sit at it. Now they have to, Ava said. We just keep the seats warm. The call from the museum came at dusk. Cylinders transferred clean. Audio stable. The tech swore she heard a hymn under a hymn on one track, a second congregation trapped in lacquer. We'll uncurl the sound by morning, she said. You bought it enough night to see day. They slept for 3 hours and woke to sirens they didn't have to answer. The order had given the rooms a name. The name had given the rooms a future. It didn't make them safe. It made them possible. In the quiet that follows a storm, the envelope with V.11 waited under the lamp like a coin and a dare. South Holston breathed in the corner of the glass. The next mouth, the next chalk line, the next argument Randall had already started for them. Ava tucked it into the folder and felt the weight shift. Not heavier, just truer. Tomorrow we talk to the paper, she said. Not to tell them everything. To teach them where to stand. Tomorrow, Tasha said. Tonight we let a quilt be a quilt and a number be a promise. Outside, the street learned its ordinary again. Somewhere a dog barked at rain. Somewhere a man in a Tahoe read a judge's signature and discovered he wasn't as patient as he thought. The hearing took place in a courtroom that still smelled like floor wax and old arguments. The judge listened the way men listen when they have held maps upside down long enough to care about north. The county attorney stacked phrases like scaffolding. The museum coordinator spoke softly about stewardship and duplicates. The archaeologist said context, and you could feel the room pretend to understand. The salvage company's lawyer arrived with a suit that didn't believe in mud. He used words like abandoned, recovered, customary. He avoided stolen. A deputy rolled in a cart with labeled sleeves and photographs. Ava's jam photo, V.13, sat on top. The judge leaned forward. This mark inside the jam, who put it there? He asked. No one alive has admitted it, the archaeologist said. But the handwriting matches Randall's field notes from the same year. He documented a duplicate vault whose existence was meant to protect records, not hide property. It's not just storage. It's intent. The judge looked at the museum text barcodes, then at the chain of custody forms, then at the temporary order he himself had signed. He nodded once, a motion tiny and tectonic. The preliminary protective order is extended. The museum will continue as trustee. Removal without court approval remains enjoined. If you believe you have a claim, file it with exhibits and history, not trucks. In the hallway, the salvage lawyer tried to be reasonable. There's room here for a business arrangement. There is, the county attorney said. It's called admission fees. Buy a ticket like everyone else. News rippled the way it does in places where people still call one another instead of posting. Church elders came to read tags. A retired switchman traced the flood line half an inch above glass. The auxiliary lady set up a table with cookies no one ate because nobody wanted crumbs near history. The first of the cylinders played in a dark room, a preacher's voice that carried sawdust and summer heat. Then, faint beneath it, a second congregation humming a harmony that must have drifted in through open windows from a tent meeting 3 blocks away, trapped together on the same disc by a wind that didn't care about denominations. The quilt lay under a soft wash of light that made the indigo wannabe river and the barn red wannabe brick. A woman in her 70s stood with her fingers pressed to the glass as if it were a window and said to no one in particular, "My mother's mother stitched that corner when she was 12. and nobody asked how she knew because some things ride blood more faithfully than documents. Ava stayed busy in the ways that keep people sane: labels, return calls, notary appointments that baptized paper with ink. Tasha did deputy diplomacy on site, spoke seen to people who appreciated it, and refused to be photographed with the quilt even when asked nicely. "Put the old hands in the frame," she said. "Ours are just holding flashlights." It would have been a clean ending if the Tahoe had learned when to leave. Instead, it idled 2 nights later across from the museum until a patrol car parked behind it and made the kind of conversation that ends with a driver choosing the scent of his own garage. The next morning, Ava found a note slide under their motel door. "Bring the book or we start from the back." No stamp, no signature, letters cut and pasted like a teenager's idea of menace. She held it the way you hold a snake you don't want to teach. "We don't have the book," Tasha said. "We have copies. And we have a courthouse. We have a building that knows how to call for help," Ava said. They brought the note to the county attorney. He didn't smile. "This is amateur hour," he said. "But amateurs escalate." He made 3 calls while they waited. By the 3rd, the sheriff had decided to like him. Patrol shifted their loops. Cameras got hung where they should have been the week before. The museum's alarm system graduated from old to modern with the speed of a budget suddenly discovering fear. For once, nothing dramatic happened that night. Instead, the deputy working the 2 a.m. shift pulled up to the service yard and found 2 box trucks with plates sprayed the color of excuses. Inside, crates and ratchet straps and a binder that had the salvage company's logo on the spine and someone else's records in the pockets. Warrants have a way of being inevitable when a binder like that finds its faith. By noon, inventory from 3 counties had been matched to tags that should never have left church basements. The word repatriation got used correctly by men who'd never had cause to learn it. After that, the Tahoe stayed away like a dog that finally learned fence boundaries. The museum breathed. The site settled. Paper multiplied the way paper does when it finds a table. The county attorney brought them a settlement written in language that didn't brag. A Discoverer's Award that turned rent into a deposit and insulin into auto refill. A consulting contract that paid them to teach other counties how to listen to their own basements. A clause that said the story would be told with credit where credit was due, including one Harold C. Randall, whose initials had been carrying the weight of a valley. The exhibition opened quiet, then crowded, then quiet again after hours when the docents told the room good night. A small panel near the entrance read, "The Vaults of the Valley, the Randall Collection." In smaller type, recovered with the assistance of local volunteers Ava M. and Tasha R. in collaboration with county and state agencies. A line beneath said what mattered more than praise: duplicate records preserved. Original stabilized. Community consulted. Ava walked the floor like a person checking windows before rain. The cylinders breathed through speakers that had learned to be humble. The quilt glowed. Kids pressed noses to glass. Elders corrected labels kindly. The switchman came back and didn't touch the flood line this time because the first touch had been enough. "Feels like an ending," Tasha said, standing beside her. "Feels like a comma," Ava said, and she wasn't being poetic. The glass negative of V.11 came back from the photographer with a contact print that showed more than the lamp had allowed. An arch, a chalk arrow, a seam, and in the corner a mark that looked like a joke only Randall would tell. Secondary, again. South Holston waited east, in hills that held weather like grudges and secrets like seeds. The map on the table showed a road nobody bragged about and a path fishermen had made official through repetition. "We could not," Tasha offered, testing the word. "We could," Ava answered, testing the other. "Not because of treasure. Because of paper. Because somebody called this a bridge and we're halfway across." They didn't say yes that night. They counted cash and copied forms and wrote thank you notes to people who had earned better nouns. The county attorney texted a photograph of a signed permanent order. The museum coordinator sent an audio clip of a hymn the tech had lifted out from under a sermon, a harmony finally allowed to stand alone. The archaeologist mailed a pen with the museum's name on it and a note that said, in square, patient letters, "Ethical architecture is built by hands that expect to be forgotten." Dawn came with the kind of sky that makes towns behave. Ava stood in the parking lot with a paper cup and watched the river stitch light into itself. Tasha joined her, hands in jacket pockets, EMS patch catching a piece of sun. "South Holston?" Tasha said at last, like offering a prayer you're not sure you have the right to speak. "We tell the museum first," Ava said. "We tell the county. We tell the churches whose quilts started this. And then we go see if the next door remembers our names." They loaded the Ranger with less fear and more forms. The brass tag, Vault 12, stayed on Ava's keychain not as a trophy but as a compass. On the dashboard, the glass negative's contact print rode under the clip like a passenger who hums instead of speaks. The road east had more curves than plans. That was fine. Some bridges are drawn. Some bridges are understood when your feet touch them. If you've traveled with us this far, you already know the rest isn't about gold. It's about names written on muslin and pencil warnings that outlive paint. It's about rooms that ask for 14 minutes of respect and a county that finally gives it. It's about a man who numbered doors so strangers could become neighbors again. Ava turned the key. The engine agreed. Tasha checked the map. The river, patient as ever, kept the beat.